Well, lots of questions need to be answered up in Seattle for the Seahawks. But we'll have to see how they go. But what's going on, guys? My name is Antonio, and this is the AAS All Around Sports. I'm your host, Antonio. Today, we are going over the top five biggest questions going into the offseason of Seattle. Of course, we're only a few days away until the free agency opens. So, for now, let's get this thing started. So, starting us off with number 5. We know that this is a little bit of a concern. But do we keep Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks, or do we go after a guy like Patrick Queen? But, Bobby and Brooks, I think, personally did very, very well with this team. But Patrick Queen, if you will go after him, which Mike McDonald may or may not, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money, which is probably best to save as much money as you can for those offensive linemen and defensive rushers. But if I know that Jordan Brooks was a big key factor for this defense, along with Bobby Wagner, but if I were to choose, if we could not re-sign both of them, I would keep Bobby Wagner because he can be signed to a short deal. He's not going to last in the NFL much longer, but you can probably draft another rookie linebacker to learn right behind him, like a Jeremiah Trotter, Adrian Cooper, a Nathaniel Watson, or maybe even a Peyton Wilson or Cedric Gray. So that's my personal perspective, because if you go after Queen, you're gonna ask him a lot of money to do that, and money is key here. Next question that is being asked around the Seahawks organization is Drew Lock. Drew Lock has been one of the guys to keep an eye on because we all know free agency is popping up, and he's entering into free agency. The question is, do you re-sign him and keep him for another year, or do you go into the draft and draft a rookie or get a veteran? Now, here's what I am thinking. What's going through the course of my head? If they sign Drew Lock, then that means it's highly likely that they don't go after a quarterback in the draft. But if you don't, then you could probably look at the draft, because most teams do like 2 quarterbacks, some teams do 3, we know the Steelers do 3, but most teams do 2. But I think that they should go after a young guy. I think they should let Drew Lock walk because he's a good backup. And if I were the head of the organization, if I was John Schneider, I would go after Penix. And because he is experienced with Ryan Grubb, and if he had a chance to learn behind Geno Smith for a year, imagine what he could be the next year after that, or whenever he gets the opportunity to prove himself, in case he gets injured. Now moving down to the next question. The running backs. Not running backs. The defensive end, Leonard Williams. Now, the question being, do we let him walk, or do you re-sign him? I think they need to re-sign him immediately, because if you cannot give up a 2nd and 3rd round pick to the New York Giants and let him walk. You cannot do that, because you gave up so much, and he was a big impact for the team. He was a big impact, and he was one of the first players to play 18 regular season games. So that's another thing to look at. But another thing I would watch is to see what they do in the draft, because they're probably going to get some help around Leonard Williams. They need to re-sign him immediately. But, and then another question is O-line help. Do you go after rookies in the draft, or do you go after veterans? I think they should go both ways because you already got some young guys in there. You got Abraham Lucas, Charles Cross, and Anthony Bradford. And then I don't know how his last name is pronounced, but I know his first name is Alu, or whatever it's pronounced as. Sorry, I'm not good at pronouncing names that are that hard to spell. And then there's like Evan Brown that's entering free agency. There's Damian Lewis. There is just a lot of guys that are entering free agency. And then also along with Phil Haynes, who I think we need to let walk because he is getting injured far too much. But if we can keep Evan Brown, I think that would help this team drastically. But as far as like free agents go for offensive line, I would probably make a run at Tyron Smith. Even though he gets injured, when he's on the field, he's an all-pro tackle. That is if the Cowboys don't re-sign him, which they're probably not gonna because it's Jerry Jones crying out loud. And then there's another guy, Trent Brown. This Trent Brown guy is still young, and he's still building up. But if they look to the draft and then also along with like veterans, I think it would work both ways. So, and then question 2. The safety position has been left wide open. But the question is, do we sign in some safeties, or do you go into the draft searching for these safeties? Now, I've looked at a few free agents. Ryan Neal is another candidate for free agency. Ryan Neal, he was with the Seahawks a little while ago. And when he was with the Seahawks, he was able to perform. Another guy I'm looking at is like Geno Stone. Those are very underpaid guys. They can be very easy to get. And then you look over to the draft. You got like Cameron Kitchens, James Williams. You got so many guys that are safeties in this draft. I think if they go both ways, it could really help the team. And then last but not least is now we know Tyler Lockett got a restructure. But the one question that I have had is should they go after another receiver? I mean, Tyler Lockett's not going to stay in the league much longer. He wants to retire a Seahawk, which is one of the reasons why they restructured his deal, so that way they can get more salary cap. But this position, I could see maybe having a potential, let me rephrase that. So the question being, I'm going to redo the question entirely. The question being, should the defensive line have free agency, help out in that situation, or do you go after some young guys that can help and grow? I personally believe that they should go after some of the defensive ends in this draft, defensive tackles, because you got like Tre'Davious Sweat, you got Johnny Newton, you got so many guys, because I think the receiver core is pretty much sold. But the tight end position is pretty much trying to be restructured. But defense, we need to build up our defensive rush because our run defense was terrible last year. We were doing good up to a point, but we were not quite there. So if we are to go after a defensive tackle, like interior defensive line, I would go after Johnny Newton, Tre'Davious Sweat, Byron Murphy, or a Chris Jones. And then maybe like a Dallas Turner if he's available, Jared Verse, or like Latia Latu. We need to build our defense because, I mean, sure, we do need a quarterback because we need a new guy. Because I still I'm not sold on Geno Smith just yet. I'm not sold on him yet. I don't think anybody is. They need to work on these things. Because if they can, And if they can build around what they can do, if they can build a team that can be a threat, especially the San Francisco, because that's rivalry number 1 in the division. Of course, Los Angeles is rival number 2. They need to match up with San Francisco and Los Angeles. Because the Rams, they got an offense, they got a defense, and same thing with San Francisco. Even though they are losing Chase Young here in a little bit. Because they can't restructure his deal. They can't re-sign him because they can't pay Bosa and Chase Young at the same time. They need to get into game. Because if they're going to make a statement early with Mike McDonald, they have to go all in, all out. Now, sure, not like all out, like Super Bowl level, but at least somewhere. Get at least somewhere. If you can get at least to the playoffs, and who knows, maybe win a playoff game, then we might have good conversations about this kind of stuff. Because Gino, he's not proved himself yet to me. Because sure, he's had 2 back-to-back winning seasons, 9-8 records. But we require more than that. We need somebody that can go into Seattle and that can absolutely shape-shift this team around. That can turn this team from being down near the bottom, right where Arizona is, to being a tough threat. Because I truly believe if this team can build around their weapons, around the things that they need to do, like running the ball more, letting it off of Gino, if they can let it all off of him, without a doubt, I could see this team being a threat. Now, of course, they got a hard schedule coming up. Not as hard as the last year's schedule. But it's going to be a little bit more trickier because you're going against the AFC East, which is like Buffalo, Miami, and other guys. And then you also go against the NFC North, which is Green Bay, Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings, Detroit Lions, and then the Chicago Bears that may or may not get Caleb Williams. We don't know what's entirely going up there. We know they're probably going to go draft Caleb Williams. But the Seahawks need to go after a quarterback, I believe, early. They need to go after one early. And if they can build around their team, around their defensive line, around their offensive line, around everything that needs to be filled, I think this team could legitimately be a sleeper team. But anyways, that's my topic for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did and want more content of Seattle Seahawks, please make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe if you're new. Turn on the notification bell for day-to-day updates on my videos and live streams. And I'll catch you all in the next one. So long for now.